Hello, welcome to Movies Explained. Today we are going to take a look at a mystery horror thriller movie titled Hypnotic. If you are new here, hi, I would love to have you as a subscriber. When the movie begins, a woman gets into an elevator terrified of something. Then she receives a call from an unknown number. When she answers, a man tells her, "Andrea, this is how the world ends." Suddenly, a high-pitched noise fills her head, and the elevator walls close in on her, crushing her. Jen is an unemployed software engineer who recently broke up with her long-term boyfriend Brian, and she's feeling stuck in life. She goes to visit her friend Gina at her housewarming party, where Gina reveals to her that Brian is at the party. Inside, the two notice each other and Gina's husband apologizes, saying he didn't know Jen was coming. Gina then introduces Jen to her therapist, Dr. Colin Mead, who is an intriguing guy with sharp blue eyes. During dinner, Jen stops Brian from eating some snacks out of habit, as she is sure there is sesame in them and Brian is allergic to it. After the party, Jen is slightly drunk when Colin approaches her and leaves her his credentials, in case she's interested in a session. As Jen waits for her Uber, Brian tells her that he thinks about her all the time and misses her. He offers to take her home, but she thinks it's a bad idea. In the morning, it turns out, they had slept together that night. Jen meets with Gina at a coffee shop and tells her all the details. Jen is just unhappy with her life and Gina once again suggests a visit to Dr. Colin. Jen agrees to go for just one session. When Jen goes to his office, Colin is glad that she decided to come in for therapy. Jen tells him about her problems, and Colin tells her that bad habits come from deeper issues, and there is always a root cause. Jen says she was happy with Brian, but she had a miscarriage, after which she just could not get her life together and broke off her engagement to him. Colin proposes hypnosis after some thought, which is a great treatment for persons who have experienced trauma. Jen hesitates, but when Colin asks what she wants in life, she responds that she just wants to be happy. He then leans in close to her and asks if she will allow him to assist her. She begins the hypnosis by focusing on the flickering light. Colin's calming words help her relax and visualize a forest filled with chirping birds. She wakes up with the room lighting up and no recollection of the previous hour's events. Colin compliments her on her performance. 3 months later, Jen has got a job at a prestigious firm. She tells Gina that she visits Colin once a week and that she is doing much better. One day, she has a sex dream about Colin, which causes her to wake up feeling confused. Afterwards, she decides not to go for her hypnotherapy sessions because it just got awkward. Jen runs into Colin at a mall. He notes that they have not seen each other in weeks, and asks her if she's avoiding him. She shrugs it off as being busy. Then he asks her out for a catch-up coffee. They have a pleasant chit-chat, and Jen tells him what she's been up to lately. When she notices that Colin does not say much about himself, he opens up about his life and talks of a woman named Amy, whom he loved very much. He even says that Amy's habits are much similar to hers. Colin advises Jen to invite Brian to her house to talk about everything that happened, saying it would help the two of them feel a lot better. In the parking lot, she receives a message from Brian that he will be at her place for dinner. Then she gets a call from an unknown number. After answering it, something happens to her suddenly. She snaps out of it at her house, having a meal at the table, when she hears a noise coming from the bathroom. She sees Brian choking and realizes that he must have eaten something with sesame. She injects him with his stimulant, and calls for an ambulance. They go to the hospital and the doctors say that he will be alright. Gina comforts her, saying it's not her fault. Jen feels uneasy because she doesn't remember anything. Jen decides to go in for another session with Colin. She tells him about not remembering a thing and that she feels responsible for Brian being hospitalized. She says that what happened to her felt similar to the hypnosis he has been performing on her. Later at night, Jen has another dream about her and Colin. When she gets up to grab a glass of water, she finds a receipt from her last visit to the supermarket and sees sesame oil listed on it. She immediately has a flashback to answering a call from an unknown number at the parking lot. The man on the line says, "Jennifer, carry the fire." She then remembers all the lost time, and even recalls her adding sesame oil to the salad that Brian ate. Feeling suspicious about Colin, Jen decides to take a closer look at him to find out who he really is and what the hypnosis is used for. She finds out that another patient named Andrea had filed a restraining order against the therapist. She tells Gina about it, but Gina does not take it seriously. Then Jen tells her that Andrea had died of a heart attack 3 days after filing a restraining order against Collins. Jen even shows the receipt with the sesame oil, and Gina finally believes her. The two women visit a detective soon afterwards. Detective Wade was the guy in charge of Andrea's case, and they question him about her, revealing to him that Jen had experienced something similar. But Wade tells them that he got nowhere with Andrea's case since there was no proof. He shows them the surveillance footage from the elevator. The walls crushing in on her was all in her head, and it started right after a call from an unknown number. Wade advises the two women to find a new therapist. Outside, Gina admits that she was also hypnotized in order to overcome her fear of spiders. After parting ways with Gina, Jen phones Colin for an appointment and chooses to record their conversation. She asks him to help her with hypnosis so she can forget about her anxieties about Brian being in the hospital. Colin agrees, but he has a feeling things aren't quite right. Meanwhile, Detective Wade is restless. He decides to go through all the hypnosis crime cases they have at the precinct and notices a similarity. All the women who made allegations against Colin look very much alike. After her session, Jen listens to the recording only to realize that Colin immediately found out that he was being recorded, and discovered that Jen and Gina knows the truth about him. What seems odd is that he ends up calling her my love. Jen is distressed and calls Gina, who is in the car with her husband, expecting an urgent call from someone else. Jen urges her to turn back home, but the signal is cut off. Just then, Gina gets a call from Colin and she answers it. He says, "Gina, this is how the world ends," and hangs up. Suddenly, Gina starts hallucinating that there is a giant spider crawling on her. She asks Scott to get the spider off of her, but it's all in her head. Gina keeps screaming to get rid of the spider as it approaches her neck. In the process, she does not pay attention to the road and gets into an accident. Colin is enjoying a drink and listening to music in his office when Wade comes by. He tells Colin that Gina and her husband died in a car accident, but Colin acts surprised. Wade goes on to tell him about the pattern of deaths among his hypnotized patients, doubting that it is a coincidence. As he talks, he manages to discreetly steal his spoon to get his fingerprint sample. Later, Jen tells Wade about the recording, and he tells her to lay low for a while, until he gathers more information. As Wade leaves, he says he will call her in the morning. Moments later there is a knock at the door. Jen thinks maybe Wade forgot something and opens the door, only to find Colin. She tries to close the door, but he yanks it open with force. As she tries to escape, he yells at her to stop and she freezes, unable to move. Colin tells her that he just wants to talk to her. He tells her that Gina and Brian got in the way of his dreams, and it is Wade who is going to be taken care of next. He says he will see her soon and signals her to relax, which makes her able to move again, and Colin leaves. Soon after, Jen tries to reach Wade to warn him, but his phone is dead. While Wade watches TV, someone appears from under his sink and slowly crawls out. It's one of Colin's patients. She stabs Wade in the arm and slashes his stomach, jumping on him and even biting him. Wade manages to throw her off. Later, Jen visits Wade in the hospital and asks him to find another hypnotherapist that can make her recall her sessions with Colin. So Jen meets with Stella, another hypnotherapist. But Jen finds it difficult to trust her after everything that happened with Colin. She nevertheless agrees to hypnosis, if Stella can get any information about her sessions with Colin. When the session starts, Jen starts having a seizure while seeing a house where Colin is giving her a bracelet. When Stella brings her back, she explains to Jen that Colin has put a failsafe on what they are doing so that no one can access her memory. She advises implanting a counter trigger inside her that might help her resist Colin's control over her. Jen searches for the house address she saw in her memory and stumbles upon some CIA documents that carry information on patients who were implanted with false memories during hypnotherapy. She visits the Sullivan house and it seems desolated. Inside, she sees a photo of Colin and his dead wife Amy, who happens to look a lot like her. Suddenly, Colin shows up behind her. With some magic words, he puts Jen to sleep. Meanwhile, Wade's associate calls him and tells him about the fingerprints on the spoon that he had stolen from Colin's office earlier. They belong to Julian Sullivan, who now calls himself Colin Mead. Wade races out and directs a unit to Colin's office, assuming that he is holding Jen there. Jen wakes up in Colin's office, where he commands her to sit down, and she does. Meanwhile, the police storm Colin's office building. Colin explains to her why this is happening to her. He goes on to say that she is an exact copy of his wife, she even smells like her. Just as the police are about to break down the door, Colin leans over and tells her that she can wake up now. When she wakes up, she is not in his office. She is at Sullivan residence. The police find the office empty, and Wade makes sense of it all and drives to Sullivan house. Jen looks around unable to move. When she recognizes the room and the music playing in the background, she understands that her dreams were not dreams, they are Colin's memories with his wife. He is trying to implant Amy's memories into Jen and eventually replace her. Colin tells her that he and Jen share the same wounds, the loss of his wife and her miscarriage, as he continues to dress her. He puts on her the same bracelet he gave his wife for their anniversary. When Colin is just about to kiss her, he hears a door shutting. It is Wade who has let himself inside the house to rescue Jen. With the power of hypnotherapy, Colin forces Jen to hold on to the railing. Wade is at a distinct disadvantage due to his injuries and Colin puts out the power. When Wade enters a room with a flickering light from a projector, he sees an outline of Colin and tries to shoot him, but fails. Jen tries her best to let go of the railing, and succeeds. Colin attacks Wade from behind with a crowbar, knocking him down and beating him up. When Jen comes into the picture to rescue Wade, Colin commands her to sleep. Jen falls to the ground, but still barely conscious, she crawls for the gun, takes aim, and manages to take one shot. A little while later, Wade wakes her up and says Colin is gone and that she shot him dead. Wade covers her with a blanket and hugs her, saying you will be fine. I promise, my love. Suddenly, Jen experiences a flashback to when Stella put a counter trigger on the phrase, my love. If Colin ever uses it on her, the counter trigger will make her ignore every single trigger that he had put in her head, and she will see the world around her for what it truly is. Soon, Jen realizes it's not Wade hugging her, but Colin. She picks up a plate and smashes it against Colin's head. She then finds Wade beaten up and bleeding. He tells her about a gun on his ankle, and she finally manages to finish Colin off for good. 1 month later, Jen is at her new job. She visits Brian every day at the hospital and comforts him. Wade gets a promotion and Jen thanks him for everything and congratulates him. Wade presents her with a token of his appreciation. When she opens it outside, it is a CD titled, Better Sleep, Self-Hypnosis. She scoffs at the irony and the movie ends here. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for more awesome movie recaps.